The day I received the call, my world shattered. My wife, the woman I had shared a decade of my life with, had passed unexpectedly. The grief hit like a tidal wave, leaving me gasping for air, my heart heavy with disbelief and sorrow. I could hardly process the reality that she was gone. The thought of never seeing her smile again, never hearing her laugh, felt unbearable. I wanted to rush to the funeral, to be there to say goodbye, to hold her hand one last time. But reality delivered a cruel twist. Her family, who had never truly accepted me, had made a decision that cut deeper than her death ever could. They had banned me from attending her funeral. At first, I thought it must be a mistake. Perhaps they didn't know how much it would hurt me, but the truth was worse. They had been growing increasingly hostile over the years. Tiny disagreements, passive-aggressive comments, and constant judgment had eroded any warmth that once existed. And now, in my moment of utmost vulnerability, they had officially shut the door in my face. I felt a mixture of anger and heartache. Anger at their cruelty, heartache at my inability to honor my wife properly, and guilt for feeling powerless. I replayed memories in my mind. Her soft voice, the way she would squeeze my hand when I was nervous. The nights we spent laughing until dawn. I had been part of her life, deeply connected to her. Yet her family had decided that none of that mattered. They didn't care about my grief, my love, or the bond we shared. To them, I was an outsider. Someone who didn't deserve a final farewell. Sitting alone in my apartment, I thought about the funeral arrangements, the flowers, the casket, the mourners, and the emptiness I would feel, not being able to walk through the doors. I imagined her lying there peaceful, surrounded by faces she had known longer than I had, and I wasn't allowed to be there. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's nightmare. I wanted to scream, to demand that they let me in, but the words got stuck in my throat. I knew it would only make things worse. Even in my despair, a quiet determination began to form. I realized that while I might be barred from the funeral, my love for her didn't require permission. I could still honor her memory in some way, even if I had to do it from the outside. I thought about the small gestures she loved, the flowers she adored, the handwritten notes she cherished, the music that always made her smile. I began planning quietly, thinking of how I could reach her spirit, if not her family, to express my grief and devotion. For now, I sat in the silence of my apartment, tears streaming down my face, clutching the photograph of us on our wedding day. The world felt empty, cold, and cruel, but I promised myself one thing. I would find a way to honor her no matter what. Even if the doors of her funeral were closed, to me my heart would never be. I knew I couldn't force my way into the funeral, but I also knew I couldn't sit idly. While the world treated my grief as if it didn't exist, I decided to act quietly, deliberately. And with all the love I still carried for her, I called the florist I had often used for special occasions, weddings, anniversaries, her birthday, and carefully selected the largest bouquet of lilies. And roses I could find. Lilies because they symbolized purity and remembrance, and roses because nothing captured the depth of my love like them. I added a simple note written in my own hand, forever in my heart, always and endlessly. I love you. I hesitated before sending it. What if her family reacted with anger? What if this made things worse? But I knew in my soul that it was the right thing to do, even if they didn't approve. Even if they tried to erase my presence, this small act of love could reach her in some way. It was my way of honoring her memory, of telling her goodbye on my terms, quietly but sincerely. The flowers arrived at the funeral home early in the morning. I imagined her lying there, serene, while the room buzzed with people she had known for years. I pictured her noticing the bouquet, her lips curling into a soft smile. Even in death, and then a small miracle happened. Her sister, Emma, noticed. She was the first in the family to spot the flowers, her eyes narrowing with curiosity and confusion. "Who sent these?" she demanded, her voice sharp but tinged with something I couldn't yet identify. When she called me later, I felt a rush of nerves and emotion. Her tone was cautious, almost accusatory, but beneath it lay a thread of curiosity. "Why would you send these? You're not supposed to be here," she said, her words echoing the anger of her parents. I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar ache in my chest, and replied, "Simply because I loved her, and I always will." Nothing can take that away, not even the world around us. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her thinking, wrestling with something she hadn't dared to express before. Slowly, her voice softened. "You really loved her?" she asked. Almost in disbelief. "You really cared?" I didn't hesitate. Every day, every moment I did, and I still do. She deserved to be loved, remembered, and honored. And I will never stop Emma's reaction surprised me. Her anger didn't vanish, but there was a change. A flicker of understanding. A crack in the walls her family had built so firmly around us. My small gesture had reached her, had bypassed the barriers of rules and pride, and had touched the part of her that remembered the love my wife had for me. For the first time since the funeral began, I felt a connection fragile, hesitant but real. That night I sat alone with my thoughts. A strange mixture of grief, relief and hope swirling inside me. Though the family had tried to shut me out, my love had found a way through. And for the first time since her passing, I felt that I wasn't completely alone in my sorrow. The next day, Emma called again. This time her voice was quieter, less guarded, carrying a vulnerability I hadn't expected. I didn't realize how much she loved you, she admitted, hesitating. There was a pause, as if she wasn't sure whether to continue. I stayed silent, letting her choose her words, my heart pounding in anticipation. Slowly she began to speak, telling me stories I had never heard before. Moments from her childhood, secrets my wife had shared with her sister, but never with me, each tale painted anew. Vivid picture of the woman I had loved for years. She used to hide little notes in my drawer. Emma said, her voice trembling. She'd write about her dreams about you, and how much she wanted to be with you. Despite all the fights we had about her choices, my chest tightened. I had always known she loved me deeply, but hearing it echoed through her sister, through someone else's memory, made it almost tangible. It was like discovering a hidden layer of her soul I had never been able to touch directly. Emma admitted something that shook me to my core. She had always resented the family's strict rules, the control, the way they dictated who my wife could associate with. I always thought the funeral would be just another example of them, showing off their power, controlling everything. She confessed when your flowers arrived. I don't know why, but it reminded me that love isn't about permission. It's about what's in the heart. For the first time since her death, I laughed softly, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was a release, a recognition that even in this tragedy, love could break through walls. Emma and I began sharing memories together, recalling funny incidents, her quirks and little things that made her unique. We spoke of her favorite songs, the movies she adored, and how she always insisted on making even ordinary days special. Each memory was a thread, weaving a fragile but unbreakable tapestry of connection between us, linking her life, her family, and me. As our conversation continued, Emma's tone shifted from cautious to warm. She thanked me for sending the flowers, admitting it had stirred emotions she hadn't faced before. You made me realize that despite everything, we both loved her in our own way. She said I felt a lump in my throat, the weight of grief mixed with gratitude. My small act of love had not only honored my wife, but had also begun to heal a fractured relationship, bringing understanding where there had only been resentment. By the end of the call, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt since the funeral began. I realized that love doesn't disappear with death. It evolves, manifests, and sometimes reaches others in unexpected ways. Through Emma, I found a connection to my wife that transcended absence. A bridge built from memories, honesty, and shared sorrow. Even though her family had tried to erase me from the day, I had found a way back into her world through the heart of her sister, and the enduring love we both carried for the woman who had defined our lives. After our conversation, Emma and I began spending more time together, quietly, respectfully, and with a shared purpose, to honor my wife's memory in a way her family couldn't control. We walked through her favorite park, revisited places she loved in the city, and shared laughter and tears as we recounted moments that only those who truly knew her could understand. The pain of her absence was still there, sharp and persistent, but it no longer felt isolating. With Emma, I realized I wasn't alone in my grief. Her love for her sister mirrored my own, and together we were keeping her spirit alive. We decided to create a small memorial in her honor, a private tribute that reflected the person she truly was. We placed candles, framed photos, and little mementos at a spot she had loved visiting, a quiet garden near the lake where she would sit for hours sketching. Thinking, dreaming, Emma and I spoke softly, sharing stories about her ambitions, the silly arguments we had, and the small moments that made her laugh uncontrollably. Each memory was a thread weaving her presence into our lives, even after death. Her family's exclusion of me at the funeral now seemed irrelevant. Their rigidity, their judgment couldn't erase the truth. The love we shared was bigger than their rules, stronger than their anger. I realized that grief, love, and memory are personal. They cannot be dictated or controlled. Even though the world tried to shut me out, My heart had found a way to honor her. Emma and I both understood that. This was more important than any ceremonial display or a social expectation one afternoon. Emma handed me a small notebook. Inside were handwritten letters my wife had left her, full of candid thoughts about life, love, and even me reading them. I felt her voice again guiding me, comforting me, reminding me of the bond we had shared. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of connection, of gratitude, of the realization that love endures even beyond death. Before parting that day, Emma looked at me with a soft, understanding expression. "I'm glad you sent the flowers," she said quietly. It reminded me that love doesn't need permission. It just exists, and it lasts even when people try to take it away. Her words echoed in my heart, a reassurance that my gestures, my devotion, and my memories would never be erased. As I walked home that evening, I felt a strange sense of closure. The funeral may have barred me physically, but it could never bar my love, my memories, or my connection to her. Love, I realized, is not about presence alone. It's about intention, remembrance, and the courage to honor it, even in the face of exclusion. And in that understanding, I finally felt at peace through Emma. Through the memories we shared, and through my unwavering devotion, my wife's spirit remained alive in my life. I had been shut out of a ceremony, but I had not been shut out of love that I knew would last forever.